Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Monday, July 8th. Over the next few days, we'll continue to have very hot, near record-breaking or record-breaking heat over the western half of the Great Basin. This will gradually spread eastward going through the middle of the week. We'll probably lose some of our record heat on the far west side of the state just due to how hot our temperatures are this time of year. However, still well above normal and very dry conditions. Not only very low daytime relative humidity, but also very poor overnight recovery, especially across Nevada and Utah and the Arizona Strip. We had some stronger winds yesterday across the southern half of the Great Basin, and today those winds really shift south and east out of the area. Still some remaining gusty winds in the far south, however. Over the last 24 hours, we had just a few cells develop in the central Sierra, and even though there was no lightning strikes showing up on the lightning map, there were some lightning detection systems that did show a few strikes in that area. Yesterday, fire activity picked up across the Great Basin, and we had 19 reported fires for over 16,000 acres, with a few new large fires in northwest Nevada, a couple in central and eastern Nevada, and one in southern Utah. So a very active day across the Great Basin for large fire activity. Over the last 10 days, we've seen no precipitation across all of Nevada and really much of southwest Idaho and western Utah, and only this precipitation over eastern Utah was just about 10 days ago. ERC percentiles continue to rise across the Great Basin with this very hot and dry conditions for a prolonged period of time. We're seeing many areas in southern, central, and western areas of the basin exceed the 97th percentile, and other areas above the 80th or 95th percentile as a whole. Looking at some of our ERC charts, you can see in northwest Nevada, where we did have a large fire near the Oregon border yesterday, ERCs are already above the 95th percentile and will continue to increase. And then also looking at southern Utah, where we had another large fire develop yesterday, ERCs are already above the maximum, as you can see by the blue line, and the forecast keeps them well above maximums for the next several days. Looking at our satellite loop or picture from this morning, you can see a very strong ridge of high pressure dominating the west coast, obviously responsible for our very hot and dry conditions. On the east side of this ridge, in combination with the trough that's been moving south across the Rockies, is what increased our winds the last couple of days and what will keep our winds somewhat breezy over southern areas. Looking at the weather pattern for later today, you can see that high slowly migrates eastward. Our record temperatures and very hot and dry conditions continue over southern and western Nevada up into southwest Idaho. So we do have high risk for that. Relative humidity remains in the single digits across much of Nevada and in the lower elevations of Utah and in the teens elsewhere. And you can see from our wind picture, we will have some breezy winds still over southern Utah and the Arizona Strip, especially western areas. However, these wind gusts out of the north or northwest will generally be in the 20s to around 30 miles per hour. Definitely not as strong as what we saw yesterday, but still more of a northerly component. Temperatures will again be hitting records over the western half of the Great Basin, so reaching 100 degrees in Boise and 115 degrees down in Las Vegas. Overnight relative humidity recoveries tonight, again reaching only the single digits in the far south and teens across much of the rest of Nevada into the lower elevations of Utah, with still better recoveries up north in Idaho and Wyoming. As we move into Tuesday, that ridge moves a little bit further east. You can see a little bit of black here on our general weather pattern showing some moisture creeping in. Definitely could see some cumulus clouds. Also couldn't rule out an isolated thunderstorm in any of these areas in Nevada and Utah, just with how hot conditions have been. But right now, moisture is very limited, and as that ridge moves east, it also suppresses a lot of that vertical motion needed for thunderstorm activity. Otherwise, our high risk for our record temperatures expands a little bit further east. And you can see still single-digit RHs, low teens now up in Idaho, and our wind picture, aside from some downslope winds on the Wasatch and Central Mountains, and also in the Sierra, relatively calm winds, but still affecting some of our large fires in Utah with some of those breezy winds. On Tuesday, temperatures remain very hot. We now reach 104 in the Boise area. Still very poor overnight recoveries across Nevada and Utah and Arizona, and also creeping up into southern Idaho, some areas not recovering much past 15 to 20%. On Wednesday, ridge still in place, a little bit more moisture creeping in here and there, even could see a little bit of moisture up in Idaho, so we'll continue to watch that. Right now, still just highlighting that record heat as it progresses across the central areas of the Great Basin. Still relative humidity, more single digits now up north and continuing further south. Otherwise, winds generally light, still some breezy winds maybe over eastern Utah. And temperatures, again, really start heating up in Idaho. We're seeing highs well over 100, 108 for Boise, and now over 100 degrees for much of Utah. Overnight recovery still remain poor. Again, a little bit better up north, up into Idaho. No precipitation forecast, but we will have to watch any instability each day as it goes forward with these very hot temperatures. Could see enough moisture creep in for a thunderstorm or two to pop, but right now, again, not expecting any significant precipitation. As we move into Thursday, still more of the same across the Great Basin with the ridge. Don't have any high risk. However, temperatures will still remain well above normal, very hot and dry. But again, much of this high risk really exhausting itself with the duration. Otherwise, on Friday, the main story Friday into the weekend is the return of moisture from the south, bringing us the potential for a better potential for lightning over southern areas starting Friday. So we do have a high risk for that, as any lightning returning to the Great Basin anytime this week or going into the weekend will be very critical after our very hot and dry conditions, both during the day and nighttime hours with that relative humidity. On Saturday, that high risk threat really expands over the southern areas of the Great Basin and pushes north up into the Sierra front. You can see a little bit of moisture here now picking up a little bit better on our weather pattern. And again, we will be watching any return of lightning, as even if it does produce some light rainfall initially, it will still be very high fire potential with how critical our fuels are after this significantly long period of record heat and dryness. And then going into Sunday, that moisture just spreads north, so possibly moving its way up into Idaho. We don't have any high risk yet for Sunday, but likely I'm sure we'll need some. We're just trying to wait to see a little bit more consistency in the models and exactly what areas we will be looking at for that lightning. You can see from the 7-day total precip, finally some precipitation on the map, especially for Arizona. As far as our area, definitely precipitation a little bit more spotty and better chances in some of the higher elevations of northern Arizona into Utah. Otherwise, very spotty precipitation and most thunderstorms really on the dry side. The 8 to 14-day outlook, taking us from July 15th through the 21st, still shows very hot temperatures continuing across the west, really much of the country, and now showing that better chance of below normal precipitation for the western half of the Great Basin, maybe near normal for parts of Utah, but probably even a little bit below with respect to overall moisture totals. But at least there'll be some moisture moving in for some thunderstorms to maybe bring a little bit increase in RH and some spotty precipitation. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.